And a very good evening to you. This is Stormtracker 16 meteorologist John Hickey live from the weather office here tonight as we track our latest winter storm. And this one, a lot more wet right now than white, and I think that's going to be the way it's going to be going here tonight. A lot of what we'll be seeing in terms of frozen precipitation probably going to be in the form of some sleet and some freezing rain. Really like doing these kind of more informal, almost kind of chats. Can kind of grab myself a cup of tea. Hopefully you are too. Staying warm tonight because even if it's quote-unquote just raining where you are, temperatures are somewhere in the mid-30s right now, and mid-30s and rain is generally unpleasant. So let's get through the unpleasantries of this forecast here tonight. And I want to start you off with what's going on here on the radar. And what we're picking up on has been some consistent rain here throughout much of the Lackawanna and Wyoming valleys. But you get up into the Endless Mountains and up to the northern tier, and you're finding that pink shading. And that, my friends, is mainly freezing rain at this point. Heard from the Shunk area around 1 o'clock or 6 o'clock this evening, and already a 1/10 of an inch of ice there. And we're going to see that this line of wintry mix, the sleet and the freezing rain, continues to drop from northwest down to the southeast. Up at the Binghamton National Weather Service office, they've gone over to all sleet at this point. And we've got a ways to go with this system. It still extends down into the Ohio River Valley and extends all the way up into the far northeast. So places like northern New York and Vermont, they're talking about all snow out of this, whereas for us, we're in that quote-unquote battleground, and that's going to be the sleet and freezing rain, most likely outcome for a lot of us here. We're going to see that transition taking place overnight. Let's show you that transition on future clouds and radar. So we are expecting continued rain through our southern tier, through the Poconos, and into a lot of our valley cities for several more hours yet. But as you go northwest, you can see where that pink shading is, and that's where we continue with mainly freezing rain, although some sleet pellets will probably work in there as we get a little bit closer to midnight. Let's jump you up to 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. And you can see that that line of sleet and freezing rain has made it into our valley cities. Still, at this point, though, holding on to mainly rain throughout our southern tier and the Poconos. Now, here's the situation for that Friday morning commute. Just about all of us at that point will be looking at either sleet or freezing rain. And that's why we've been saying that the Friday morning commute would be the most hazardous commute, as things should be improving by the evening commute on Friday, but certainly the morning is going to be a mess, and that's why we have a lot of closures that have come in for a lot of our school districts for tomorrow. Things will be tapering off with this system by early tomorrow afternoon. In fact, I think a lot of us will probably end up with a couple of snowflakes from this whole thing on the backside. What will be the story out of the system, though, will be the icing situation. It looks like some of us coming away with probably as much as a ½ inch of ice, but that's mainly going to be confined to some of the higher elevations. This is a weather model that puts together this particular map, so I don't necessarily buy that it's going to be a ½ an inch of freezing rain in Williamsport, but I do think that that's a possibility. Coming down 220 out of Bradford County up into the mountains of, let's say, Sullivan County, places like Shunk and Lopez could easily come away with as much as a ½ inch of freezing rain, and I think that's going to extend back into the Red Rock area, down into the back mountain, as well as some of the mountainous terrain like Falls up through Wyoming County, probably in line for some of those higher end ice accumulations. Once you step down into our valley cities, I think some of those numbers probably a little high. It's looking more like a 1/10 to a 1/4 of an inch of ice. And then down through the coal region, the southern Poconos, places like Lake Harmony could probably come away with about, let's say a 1/3 of an inch of ice by the time all is said and done. And when you're talking about ice, different amounts of ice have vastly different impacts. Anything under a 1/10 of an inch does cause all sorts of issues on any kind of untreated roadway, but in terms of any kind of power outages, really limited impacts there. But once you step it up to about a 1/4 of an inch of ice, things become more problematic. Now, we're not talking about a lot of wind with the system, which is good, because that mix of ice and wind is what is the absolute most dangerous. Once you start talking about a 1/4 of an inch of ice and wind, that usually leads to some fairly widespread power outage issues. But we're not thinking that. We're thinking that it's going to be not much wind, so it'll take a ½ an inch of ice or more to talk about any kind of more significant power outage issues. As it stands right now, only Lackawanna County has anything more than, let's say, 200 homes and businesses without power at this point. everywhere else is generally under 100 homes and businesses without power as we look around county by county. So far so good, but we expect this to be changing overnight. In terms of impacts, we expect the highest impacts from this storm system to mainly occur overnight through the morning drive tomorrow. That's when we're talking about the most significant ice accumulation, and the roadways will be probably at their worst at that point. Things will be improving through the day as crews get out, get the salt down, and the precipitation comes to an end, and then things will be able to be cleared up by that Friday evening commute. But tomorrow morning looks to be kind of the worst of things out of this whole deal. So let's recap what's going on. We're seeing that rain changing over to that wintry mix of sleet and freezing rain here now. Overnight is when we expect the most significant icing and power outage issues. Looks like things are going to be tapering off tomorrow morning through about noon. So most likely that morning commute would be the most hazardous. So one of the good parts about doing these live situations is, well, it's again kind of informal, so we can talk about some things that are just coming in as we speak on the wires here from the National Weather Service chat line. And they're talking, especially up through the northern tier, through the Endless Mountains, that the freezing rain is going to be hanging in there for a while. So just as we talked about, this is where we expect some of the higher end icing totals to be. To jump you back to that, in case you're just joining us here with this live event, so they're kind of confirming now that it's looking like the Endless Mountains and then up into the northern tier, we're going to be looking at the most significant icing. So again, just to kind of outline that, so some of the mountains again up through Sullivan County, up through Wyoming County, and even up into Forest City, places like Waymart too, probably talking about the highest icing totals out of this whole deal. And that's where we'd find the majority of our power outages and certainly the worst of the road conditions. If you've got any kind of pictures that you want to be able to share with us, of course you can do that. You can submit those via text to us. The number to get those to us, you text the word weather, and then 570-826-1616 is where you'd be sending that. Of course, you can send them in on Facebook or Twitter. You can email any of your photos as to what you're seeing where you are. We certainly appreciate those. For the latest updates on this storm, be sure to check out our website, WNEP.com, as well as our app that would have the most up-to-date information for you. In fact, right on our homepage, we have a whole listing of an article totally dedicated to all sorts of facts about the storm, including your icing totals, snow totals, the timing and impacts, exactly where you are. You can also get the latest check on our radar there as well. We've got another live update coming up on TV at 9 o'clock, and of course you can catch our newscast at 10 on WNEP2 and at 11 on WNEP. We'll see you